Lonnie Theodore Ted Binion loved money, booze, hard-bodied women, and black tar heroin. Ted was one of the sons of racketeer gambling icon Benny Binion, who owned and ran Binion's Horseshoe. At the age of 21, Ted assumed position as casino manager and became well known for his womanizing, boozing, and drug use, as well as for rubbing elbows with mob figures. Then in March of 1995, Ted Binion met 23-year-old Sandy Murphy at Cheetah's Topless Bar where she was working. Shortly thereafter, Binion's wife Doris filed for divorce, left with their daughter for Texas, and Sandy moved in with Ted. In 1997, the Nevada Gaming Control Board suspended Binion's license and a year later permanently revoked it after he failed a drug test. Now excluded from the casino that bore his family name, Ted's heroin use increased, and in the summer of 1998 he had contracted with associate Rick Tabish to build an underground vault on his property in Pahrump to store over $8 million worth of silver bars and rare coins. The treasure was buried on the 4th of July, 1998. Less than 2 months later, Ted Binion was dead. Binion's body was discovered at 3:55 p.m. on September 17th by Sandy Murphy.
Emergency. My husband's not breathing. I need someone to come out of the house right away.
We'll have the medical man, all right?
Hello?
She hung up. She said her husband wasn't breathing.
An autopsy confirmed that Binion had died from a lethal combination of Xanax and heroin. The day before his death, Binion had purchased 12 pieces of tar heroin from Peter Sheridan, a drug dealer, and personally filled a prescription for 120 Xanax tablets at a local pharmacy. But in the days that followed, what looked like a typical overdose quickly took on suspicious implications as details began to surface. Medical experts estimate that Binion had been dead for 4 to 10 hours by the time paramedics arrived, and the autopsy verified that the body had been moved. Brad Perry, a caretaker and security camera specialist, noted that the security video recorder at the house had been disabled. That morning, Sandy Murphy had called the housekeeper and told her Ted was not to be disturbed that day. James Brown, a lawyer representing Binion's estate, said he was told by Binion the day before his death to remove Murphy from his will. Brown said Binion told him, "Get Sandy out of the will if she doesn't kill me tonight. If I'm dead, you'll know what happened to me." At 3:47, 8 minutes before making the 911 call, Sandy had received a 1-minute call from Rick Tabish. And on September 18th at 2 a.m., less than 48 hours after Binion's death, Nye County Sheriff's Department arrested Rick Tabish and 2 other men, leaving Binion's property in Pahrump with 48,000 pounds of silver from his underground vault, the vault that he helped Binion build and whose combination was known only to Binion and himself. Tabish was arrested on burglary and theft charges, and when the $100,000 bail was posted, Sandy Murphy signed the paperwork. Detectives for some time had suspected Murphy and Tabish of being romantically involved and had learned that Binion suspected Murphy was cheating on him. A private investigator and former Las Vegas homicide detective Tom Dillard was hired by the Binion family to probe deeper into the death. Nearly 6 months later, in March of 1998, the Clark County coroner classified Ted Binion's death as a homicide, hinging predominantly on Dillard's findings. On the evening of June 24, 1999, Sandy Murphy and Rick Tabish were taken into custody in a Smith's grocery store near their Henderson apartment. Both were charged with murder, conspiracy, robbery, grand larceny, and burglary. Almost a year later, in May, after nearly 68 hours of deliberation, a jury convicted Murphy and Tabish of murder. Murphy was sentenced to 22 years to life, and Tabish was handed 25 years to life. But the Nevada Supreme Court overturned the convictions, and the pair were granted a new trial which began on the 11th of October, 2004. Both were acquitted of Binion's murder, but convicted of burglary and grand larceny. Tabish spent 11 years in prison for attempting to steal Binion's silver. He was released in May of 2010 and paroled to Montana. Following the acquittal, Sandy did not return to prison and now lives in California with her husband, where she co-owns and runs a gallery in Laguna Beach. In the end, no one walked away unscathed, and the shadowy mystery that surrounds Ted Binion's death still lingers. A fitting Las Vegas bedtime story of drugs, love, betrayal, greed, buried treasure, and death.